Hey there YouTube, it's Petey Two-Finger. This video, I'm quickly going to give an overview on this do-it-yourself amp. So this is a speaker that I repurposed. I mounted a power supply to the back of the speaker. I built just a back plate for it so it wouldn't be like open. It would be more closed, and it's got a port. And then this is the actual amplifier. This is built from scratch. It is a Runoff Groove is the name. Well, I remember when Runoff Groove was called homewrecker.com, and that was back in the AOL free trial internet days of like 1996, that golden summer they call it. Homewrecker was the first place that I knew of on the World Wide Web that offered schematics and wiring diagrams to make your own guitar effects pedals. And one of the things on there that's been on there forever is called a tonemender. And that's what the preamp in this amplifier is. So to qualify, the petey's amp building school, to qualify as a guitar amplifier, in my understandings of it, you would need to have a preamp, you would need a power amp, and a speaker cabinet. Those are the three things, main ingredients. This one has the power supply built into it. And what's interesting about the Class D amplifier is they're up to 93% efficient. And when I talk about specs on the Class D amp, you have to keep in mind that there was a time in aftermarket audio and cheaper or Chinese import audio stuff, they would put on the box, it would say 4,000 watts of power, and then you would buy it for $8, whatever they were selling this thing to you for. And when you opened it up and read the chip, it would be like 4 watts of power. And so that's what's known as China watts. And so the Class D amp technology is not rated in China watts. That being said, what's in here, the chip is rated at 100 watts, but this is not a 100 watt configuration. In order for it to hit 100 watts, you have to have a 4 ohm load. This is an 8 ohm speaker. So, I guess we'll talk about we'll talk about the amp a little more, and then I'll talk. I'm dying to talk about the calophone. So there is a power switch, a bright switch. You toggle that between. This is a wet blanket over the speaker, and when you click that switch up, it's like taking a wet blanket off of it. There's more treble. So you have like your input volume or your input gain is your first knob. Then there's a 3-band EQ, which is the bass middle treble, bass mid-range treble, and then there is the master volume, which is, oh, look at that. Okay, the gain is the blue knob. The master is, and I've been operating this amp inversely, because it's been so long that I made it and labeled it. I have the gain and the master volume confused. The reason I'm making this video is a couple reasons. I mean, I just finished this project of pairing these two things. They sound phenomenal together. This amp, what you have to understand is I've experimented of hacking and building amps from scratch, not tube technology, just solid state and chip amps, and then repurposing a lot of things and modifying things and building pedals. I've got a lot of experience doing that, like a ridiculous amount of experience. And the best amp you can make is this one right here. Now, it doesn't run on 9 volts. It does. You can run it on 9 volts. It really likes to see 24 volts. And at least 3 amp, 5 amp, 10 amp if you could spare it. You know, you can get a power supply or rig up 2 of them in parallel. Take 2-year-old Xbox power supplies and splice them together, just like a couple of D batteries. But don't tell Dad. Now, this one here, I keep wanting to go to the back of this. The preamp, the tonemender, has this toggle switch, and as you can see here, if you set your bass all the way down and your mid-range in the middle and your treble all the way down and shut the bright switch off, you have a flat frequency response. If you want to mimic a Fender frequency response, you noon everything and kill the bright switch. If you want to mimic a Marshall, you turn the bright switch on, noon your bass and treble, and 75% your mid-range. To imitate a Vox amp, you turn your bright switch on 3/4 of the way down on your bass, just a hair below noon on the mids, and noon your mids, and that will give you a frequency response curve of a Vox AC30 amp that's nooned. You know, considering like nooning the EQs on these things, like the bass tone. So the way that I really run this is with the bright switch on. I got the treble not all the way. Same thing with the mid-range. I have a mid-heavy signal, and then I keep the bass on about 3/4. And I run this amp fairly clean. Like the gain is low. And I don't necessarily crank this, although it does have considerable power. You think, okay, would this keep up with the drummer? Yeah, it would do a decent job keeping up with the drummer. Really, I would want to have a couple more speakers with it. The chip amp, the actual power amp, is what's known as a TDA3116D2 mono, and they're rated at 100 watts if you have a 4 ohm load, or is it a 2 ohm load? This is an 8 ohm load. This is probably, if I hit it with 24 volts with an 8 ohm load, we're more than likely going to be putting out somewhere between 30 and 40 watts, is what I'm guessing. And as far as these Class D power amp chips go, these boards from China, there are other channels. Williston Audio is the name of a guy that owns the dyno. And what he does, he purchases all this stuff, especially more of the car audio, and he will connect the amplifier to the dyno, which measures the input and the output power and the heat and all. It's got all kinds of figures that it figures out for you. And what it does is he's verified that these Class D amps are not using China watts to measure their power ratings that they spec out. So when you buy the thing and it says that it's 100 watts, it is 100 watts. So in this application, again, it's only probably more like about 30, and I'm like these. It has a preamp, but I'm not using it the way that you would consider a traditional guitar amp. This is, in all reality, in the way that I apply it, is a powered speaker. Okay. So I'm always using an amp modeler or some really nice dirt pedals, like the Greer Lightspeed. Have you ever played a Greer Lightspeed? It's an unbelievable overdrive pedal, and I know that's a dirty word with a lot of you tone purists because you haven't ever tried. And you know what? It uses the OPA 2134, the Burr Brown, the $6 or $8, is it? Not is it probably now? It's probably $18 op amp chip. You know, little op amp chip. These are the real expensive ones. And you think, oh, that's cork sniffer stuff. Well, it actually works. I couldn't believe it. And typically for this, I run a new XMG30, which is a really good sounding amp modeler. And I use the Vox AC30 a lot, but I'm running a Germanium Rangemaster with a couple other, a mid boost, a Demeter Fat Control, and then I've got an EP boost, which is like a bass boost. So I'm boosting the hell. I'm using really good analog pedals with the Germanium to goose the amp modeler into getting a little bit more of that feel and that tone that is the 70s. And it sounds phenomenal. And this is a really good amp, like I said. Pairing it with the Rangemaster, you can't skimp out on that. So if that's a little bit above your head, you could just get an EQ, you could use boost pedals, you can do whatever you want. You could make a single boost pedal and put it in front of this, and it'll work better than not. If you know how to build a Rangemaster and get an EQ pedal and pair it with that, You know, you don't have to necessarily build the EQ into the amp. You can build the amp into a shoebox and use a laptop power supply, an 18 volt, 6.75 amplifier, or 6.75 amp power brick for your mom's laptop that died. So this is a Caliphone. It's a 12-inch speaker that's from a record player, and I got it and modified it. I put the back with the hole in it, the port. There's also, you can get into this amp, into this here, or if you have your own cable, you could plug the cable into there. This is basically the same thing. And then you pop these 18650 batteries in here. There's 6 altogether. That comes up with 24 volts, and that's what our amp runs on. So you plug this in, the batteries go back in here. There's a fuse down here. This is a 12-inch full-range speaker that was for this, for a phonograph. And I tried it up against the Fender 12-inch speakers, this, not the special design Fender, the actual legit ones that they put in the Twin. I forget what, it's just a Fender American speaker, I think, whatever it is. It's nothing special, but it's Fender. And I cannot hear the difference between that Fender speaker and this, what's in here. So it's staying in there until I blow it. This is what I'm going to be using in the Duo, so I will be using this remote, so you'll be able to hear that. If you're curious about what my sound is, you can type in remote jam, and then you'll see me and my wife playing in the woods, and that's all battery operated gear. There's no AC outlet. I built all that stuff. It's a 600 watt PA system that we play through that I built that runs on an e-bike battery. Anyway, I started doing this a long time ago when I was a little kid. I took apart a flashlight and made the light up, and that was a big thrill for me because I was in kindergarten. My cousin showed me how to do it, and since then I've been playing with this stuff, and this is the amp that I think is really the most rewarding. It's really pretty cheap to build. The power amp is, you can get them for $5. So, and you know, like I paid $7 for the Caliphone. So this is something I could build and have fun with the project, and my wife gives me a hand. And it's not like I'm going behind my wife's back, going to Guitar Center, taking out a loan and like pimping out one of my kids to buy gear, like some of you guitar players are, lying to your wives about your purchases. I know about that stuff. Anyway, I'm not saying this is smart or this is a good way to do it. This was fun for me. The sound is passable and it's good. I'm sure whatever store-bought thing that you got is going to maybe outperform this in a lot of different ways, especially if it's a really nice amp. Like if you're putting this up against a Vox AC30, of course I wouldn't compare it. But in a pinch, with my modeler and my Rangemaster, when you were to hear this, it sounds good, man. It sounds really good. And I'm more or less bringing this out here, not like, oh, I've discovered the secret and the answer. This is just something I like to do, and I thought maybe somebody out there would be interested in doing that. If you ever wanted to build your own guitar amp, now's a really fun time to do it, and it's cheap, and the information's out there. The best combination of circuits for me that I found was pairing a Class D amp board with this runoff groove tonemender EQ. That's what I really like building. And I've built a lot of these. I've tried all kinds of different things. I built Marshall Super Lead clone with a spring reverb in it. That's a great amp, but it doesn't fit in this little box here. This is really neat. I like this. This is going to be my center channel. I run a wet, dry, wet. So you guys, thank you so much for joining me on this. If you have any questions, nobody ever comments on this thing. So anyway, thank you so much for your time. I always like to say hug your pets and peace.